Hello, my name is Mary Napolitano, and it's my pleasure to talk to you today about Standard Imaging's IMSure QA software. I'm the product manager for IMSure. In short, IMSure is second check software that is reliable, quick, and easy to use. Here are some of my colleagues at Standard Imaging. Why we come to work each day. Because what if it were you or a member of your family with cancer? Standard Imaging employees are proud to be a leading manufacturer of radiation calibration and quality assurance instruments. Let's go over a bit of housekeeping before we get started. Today's webinar will be recorded. Please enter your questions at any time during the presentation in the GoToMeeting dialog box. I will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. Standard Imaging is based in Middleton, Wisconsin, and founded in 1989. On the slide is a picture of the backside of our office building in Middleton, Wisconsin, showing you our solar panels. But like many of you, as my position allows, I am working from my home today. We at Standard Imaging design and manufacture a full suite of QA products. In today's webinar, I will try to answer the question, why use IMSure? I will give you a very high-level review of each of the 4 calculation modules, as well as provide details on the required input parameters as I step through the modules. There are 4 calculation modules that are selected individually in the UI, and you can see from this snippet of the IMSure software, the MU, the QA, the CyberKnife, and Brachytherapy module icons. So the calculation modules, each of the calculation modules as input requires an RT plan, or for the CyberKnife modules, an XML file. The MU module is a hand calc based on a single source model, and is good for a second check of 3D conformal, SRS cone, or electron plans. The QA module is geared toward a 2D plan QA, which you'd want to use with, for example, VMAT and IMRT. It's based on a 3-source model and generates Fluence map comparisons, as well as point dose comparisons. The CyberKnife module, and then the 4th module is the Brachytherapy source model. So let's start with the first module, the monitor unit module, where we compute dose points. This module has behind it the traditional calculations by Dr. Kahn. And this equation should look familiar to you. It's taken from our user guide as well, where the monitor unit is calculated based on the prescription dose to the calculation point, the isodose line intended at the calculation point, the tissue maximum ratio at the effective point of interest, the off-axis correction factor, wedge correction factors, and the rest of the factors associated with this equation are then used and input into the following equation as well for the calculation of the dose at each point. So that's just a little bit about what's behind the MU module. The next module is the QA module, which is used for IMRT and VMAT. And the 2D Fluence calculation is based on the 3-source model. And this 3-source model has a primary photon source and 2 scattered photon sources. The primary photon source is placed at the geometric position of the target. The scattered photon sources are based at the base of the flattening filter, and then the other one at the base of the primary collimator. As well, there are contributions from the leaf and the jaw transmission. And I want to share with you the reference if you'd like to look up more details. This publication by Yang et al. From Stanford is the three-source model that's used in IMSure. This is a graphic as well from the reference that shows a side view slice of the depiction I have here of the linac head, and it just gives some information about the detector's eye view at the point where the Fluence calculation is made, and the opening of the apertures, the MLC and the jaw, and how those are integrated, and the contributions of each of the sources as well. The two scatter and the one primary source are contributing to the detector eye view and essentially the calculation of the fluence. This equation, again from the reference, shows the three components: the primary fluence correction from the primary photon source, and then the two components from the two secondary sources are shown next in the equation. And please see the reference for detailed if you'd like more details. So once we have the fluence calculation, then one wants to analyze. So what features does IMSure have that allow for the analysis between the treatment planning fluence map and the IMSure calculated fluence map? Well, you can look at the percent difference as well as the gamma, and then statistics on the correlation coefficient are shown to ensure that the proper fields are matched between the imported and calculated beams. And I'll show this in the software a bit later. The physics data for the MU and QA modules required is shown here. It's a standard commissioning data that one would collect. For example, the open beam measurements, one would require the TMR data for the clinical field sizes that you would like to model. We can convert PDDs into TMR data if required. The off-axis profile for the largest field size at multiple depths, the output factors over a clinical range where you would like your model to be valid, the head scatter factors for the same range, wedged beam measurements, again, the same data, TMR data, a profile for the largest field size at multiple depth, and output factors or wedge factors for these same field sizes. As well, one requires the absolute calibration. And of course, the conditions under which that absolute calibration is required, the SSD and depth. As well, for an electron model, that similar data is required. So then this data is imported into the physics module, which is entered into by selecting the physics icon from the software. The linacs that we support are most Electa linacs, Varian linacs, Siemens, and CyberKnife. For these linacs, we support the standard flattened beams as well as SRS beams. One can generate separate models based on the dose rate in the plan file. That triggers if you're going to use the SRS model so that you can focus more on your smaller fields, or the standard model. We also support flattening filter-free beams, and cones can be associated with any of these other models. And what I'm showing here is a screenshot from this physics module, and you can see the TMR tables in data. And then as well, if one wants to review the graph of any of the data that's imported, one can be ensured that they have imported their data properly. So then once the data is imported into your QA or MU modules and you have a model completed, what types of external beam plans does IMSure support a second checkup? We support plans that have wedges, photon plans, electron plans, SRS plans with cones, dot decimal compensator plans, as well as mixed photon and electron plans, and IMRT and VMAT delivery. So then moving on to the brachytherapy module. In this module, we support both HDR and LDR plan import. The algorithm behind IMSure's brachytherapy module is the TG43 formalism, which is shown here. And just a little review, the dose rate, which is equal at a particular position, shown here in the graphic, the point. So one can calculate the point at a particular position and angle based on the air Kerma strength, the dose rate constant, the geometry factor, divided by the geometry factor at the reference point, which is at a distance of 1 centimeter from the perpendicular bisector of the seed, the radial dose function, and the anisotropy function at the particular position. And then what I show behind the equation is the source library for IMSure. And with install, we have some demo data that is in the install. Of course, you will need to check that data and confirm that the values are correct, or you can import into IMSure the consensus data for any of the brachytherapy sources following the TG43 formalism. And here I just show that the Theragenics Model 200 LDR source G of R data, and it's the U1 consensus data set, and these are the points that were input, and then a radial dose function is also shown graphically, just so you can check your data, which is an important step. So then after the data is input into the source library, then you can focus on importing your RT plan for your brachytherapy source calculation. And in the RT plan, you can import dose points. In this particular example, there is only one dose point, which is this yellow cross. And at this calculation point, you can review the imported dose from your treatment planning system versus the IMSure TG43 calculated dose and the percent difference. As well, you can review the contribution from every dwell or source position, depending on if it's a high dose rate or low dose rate source. And so you can review the contribution from each of these dwell positions or source locations. So moving on next to the CyberKnife module. So the CyberKnife module has a different set of data that is imported, which I didn't go into the details of, but it's pretty similar. And we can compare the composite results between the TPS dose and the IMSure dose, or the monitor unit comparison, as well as the number of nodes that are in each bin of your acceptance. So in this example, 51 of the 69 nodes had contributions within 2% of the TPS dose and the IMSure dose comparison. And then, of course, if you'd like to look at comparisons on a node-by-node basis, those are in the UI as well. And you can look at monitor unit comparisons as well as dose comparisons contributions from each of the nodes shown here, nodes 23 through 34, but you just scroll up and down to see all of the nodes and their associated contribution to the total dose. So once one's completed their analysis in IMSure for any of the 4 modules, then the next step, of course, is reporting. IMSure, of course, can create a PDF report, and it's can be in English, French, or Portuguese, and one can customize the details of what's contained in the report. For example, the beam summary, the calc point summary, if you like the gamma maps and the different maps, what you've imported. As well, you can export to a CSV file for Excel if you'd like to export all of your calc points for further analysis. And so next on my list is the software demo. So I'm going to just go through the QA module a bit, looking at the Fluence maps and dose points for a brain plan. So just let me switch over to the software. And I already have the software open. All I did was I clicked Import Plan, and then I'm waiting for IMSure to review all of the DICOM plans that are waiting for import. And there were a list of about 8 plans, and I imported this brain plan. We can see before we even load that it has 11 beams, 9 Fluence maps. It has the ROIs from the structure set, but this particular example, I do not have the CT plan, the CT images for. So since I've already imported, I'm going to go ahead and cancel, but the import process is quick. I've calculated the Fluence map. And so what we're looking at now on the screen is the IMSure calculated Fluence map, as well as the field by field comparisons for the MU. And if we go over here to the calc points, we can see the TPS versus IMSure dose. There are multiple display options. We can look at the MLC and play through that as the MLCs move for each field. The same for the transfers. Since I didn't import a CT data set, we can't see much from this view. We can look at the imported Fluence map, the calculated Fluence map, and then of course there's the difference map and the gamma map. If you'd like to see them all at once, there's an option for that as well. We just open up the multi-view and you can scroll through all of the fields and look at all of the displays. As well, we have the histograms, and so you can review the histogram for the difference map or the gamma map as a function of field. And so you can go through and review and see what sort of distribution you have. In particular here for field 1, the distribution looks pretty tight. And see, I think I showed you the field by field points, the screens as well. And so that concludes what I had to show you for the software. And so now back to the PowerPoint. And so that concludes my presentation. I hope you've seen that IMSure is an easy, fast second check for multiple different QA requirements at a clinic. And I thank you for your time. If you'd like more details or links to the publications regarding IMSure, please go to the Standard Imaging website. For an in-depth overview of the IMSure software, please contact your regional Standard Imaging account representative. And if you don't know who that is, you can find that on our website as well. And so now I'll look and see if there are any questions and answer those. Of course, you can contact me separately if you'd prefer not to put it in the chat window. And so I'll give it just a moment. And I don't see any questions other than my screen wasn't sharing in the beginning of the presentation. So I guess that's it. And thanks and have a good day. And thank you for joining us.